Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Catering Customer Retention Starts with Restaurant Certification. My name is Lisa DeFeo-Basque, Senior Faculty Member here at the Catering Institute, and I'm going to be your moderator today. This is the latest edition of Catering Institute webinar series, catering education webinars that are designed specifically for the restaurant community looking to increase sales in the catering and off-premise space. Today, I'm happy to say I'm joined by Earl Dardick, who founded the Catering Institute in order to meet the catering program strategy and education needs of operators, franchisors, franchisees, and vendors in the restaurant and food service industries. Earl has been helping solve multi-unit catering operational challenges for over 15 years, and we feel so privileged to be in the position to serve this amazing community. Hi, Earl. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. Before we begin, I'd like to say a special thank you to our partners in education. That's PepsiCo, Monkey Media Software, Catering Insights. Our partners are instrumental in working with Catering Institute to provide education and learning resources to the restaurant community in order to help grow the off-premise space. Their support is greatly appreciated. Thanks very much. We'd also like to take a moment to thank our certified supply chain partners. These organizations are expanding their services to support the Catering Institute clients and their catering programs. All of our partners have been certified by the Catering Institute and offer valuable support and expertise to our clients. Thanks very much for all you do. Here at the Catering Institute, we set the standard for catering education and certification for restaurants, and these webinars allow us to share our knowledge and expertise. With that being said, let's dive into today's agenda. So we're going to talk about why the need to certify restaurants. We're going to talk about the importance of the menu, the 6 steps of execution, sales visibility at the store level, checklist, delivery 101, and then some Q&A at the end. Sound good, Earl? Did I forget anything?
No, good conversation.
All right. So I'm so excited we finally get to have this webinar. We've talked about it so many times, and I know it's a passionate point of reference for you. So let's just get into it, shall we?
Sure.
When we talk about certifying the restaurants, what are we saying? What's the expectation?
Yeah, so we've learned that not all restaurants are caterable, and so depending on the structure of your particular restaurant brand, whether you're a single unit operator or a small multi-unit operator or you've got a large franchise system, what we're finding is that the need to set a standard and framework for restaurants to follow is really the gap, if you will, that really lives deep in these restaurant companies who are having a hard time measuring and benchmarking to see how their restaurants are performing in the catering space. So the certification process is really just the idea of bringing in some standard and framework for operators to follow and measure against, and we'll talk more about certainly what type of certification we do as we go through the webinar today.
Excellent. And I like to, we've talked about this in the past, but I really feel like it's a privilege to cater. It's very profitable, right? How many people have to walk into a restaurant in order to make up for one catering order?
Yeah, it's interesting, Lisa. You've worked in the space for many years as well, and typically the viewpoint or perspective often inside restaurant companies is that catering is an interruption. It's really sort of this process that a lot of the GMs feel gets in the way of their core business, and so often hasn't received the support inside organizations to celebrate and really give GMs the right to earn the right to cater, because as you and I know, that if you apply resources to it and you put in the framework and you work hard, that in fact you change the unit economics of your restaurant drastically should you have a successful catering operation out of your restaurant. And when that happens, if you set up the right bonus structure, your general manager is going to be a happy camper. And so setting the culture and mindset to shift the perspective that catering should be celebrated and your restaurant needs to earn the right to do catering inside our organization is paramount.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the other things that we find is the restaurant staff is usually very familiar, obviously, with the retail menu, but not so much with the catering menu. So why is it different? Why is there a disconnect?
It's also another very good question. I think it's getting less and less in a lot of the operators who are learning that catering is a different business, and as a result, its offerings are completely different because you're filling a demand in the market that essentially is not the same as a retail transaction. And so it only stands to reason that your products are different, your packaging is different, because of the dynamic of what a catering order may look like. And so what we often find in some cases, there's a lot of confusion internally within many of the restaurant companies that we work with because there's not a clear enough definition between what is a takeout or dine-in consumption experience look like, what does a catering experience consumption look like, and those very often may be very, very different. And so we end up with essentially looking at channels, and each one of those channels needs its own menu. Those menus should be costed. Again, the packaging may be different. You don't have to offer all the items on your retail menu in your catering operation. As a matter of fact, I would encourage you to have items that are different in your catering operation, something craveable, so that people know the difference between ordering catering versus your retail. So creating that type of relationship between your existing menu and the catering menu is, again, an area that's a huge gap for most restaurant companies. There's a lot of work that needs to get done in that space. And then, of course, once you have a clear identity on what the program is, then it's about educating your frontline workers to understand the differences and be able to make sure they can speak to consumers and the market about that.
Yes, I mean, when we traveled restaurants, we see those big posters in the windows that say "We cater," and then we go and ask somebody at the restaurant, and they always have to get a manager, and they just have that kind of "uh-oh" look, like they're not quite sure what to say, and that doesn't really, foster confidence in the program. So I couldn't agree more with you.
Exactly.
So, we talk about the 6 steps of execution, and can you talk a little bit about why and how you recommend implementing this procedure?
Yeah, I mean, maybe let's go to the next slide. I think you might have an image there. Yeah, so sharing the image. So, this is our 6 steps of flawless execution. What's important here is that the listener really understand that flawless execution is the key to really succeeding in a catering channel. And so, data shows that your customers expect things on time. They expect orders to be accurate. There's all of these elements, essentially, of making sure that your execution is proper. And so, as we know, the dynamic of catering often includes delivery. Not always. Sometimes it's pickup, but it's not a consumption experience that happens in your restaurant unless you're looking at private dining or some other element. But the type of catering we're speaking about is off-premise consumption. And so what happens is when the food leaves your establishment and in transit ends up at some destination where it may be consumed, in 10 minutes or it could be an hour, you lose control essentially of the order up until the point where you drop it off. And of course, this depends if you do your own delivery and so on. And so there's really an important process internally with every transaction that you slow down in your organization and you make sure that you take these 6 steps that we recommend to make sure you haven't missed anything in the order, because there's nothing worse than when a catering order lands on the customer's boardroom table and we forgot napkins or we forgot one particular beverage or sandwich or a detail on the order. And so, we receive the orders, we organize production, typically happens the day before. We look at planning, we look at tomorrow's production, how much turkey do I have to slice, how many paper plates do I need. We then begin preparing deliveries, so we have to think of the drivers, we got to make sure that the trucks are well organized, that they're oiled, that there's air in the tires. There's all these elements that really mitigate the risk of delivery the next day. So this all happens the day before. And then, of course, the general preparation of the order, and then the delivery and setup on the other side, which is typically a limited service experience. Every brand is different in terms of what you want your expectation to be in terms of setting up the orders for consumption. And the last one, and a lot of people forget about this one, is the follow-up, which is really following up with every single order. It's getting on the phone, it's calling the customer, it's asking them how was everything today, whether asking them to criticize anything they can, any feedback. Those types of things are very, very important when it comes to a catering transaction, which can be a very high value transaction, to keep confidence with the customer, make things right if anything's gone wrong, and we're just being proactive in the process. So, there may be 12 steps to flawless execution in between, but these are our 6 steps that we suggest to people.
Yeah, I think, I was actually just with a restaurant company yesterday, and we were doing a test order. They have a new catering program, and they wanted to introduce it to a pretty sophisticated buyer in the space. So we took the order out, and I was with the driver, but we didn't have any packing slips. We didn't call and confirm the order. We really didn't have the 6 steps of flawless execution implemented yet. So we just did it like how they normally do it, and we forgot the cookies. We got lost and, it was just a great example. And, we knew that this was I knew that this was going to happen when we went out. And, we forewarned the customer that we are brand new at it and it was a free meal. So they were totally understanding rather. But I mean, it just goes to show if you don't have this regular routine set of steps and procedures that you follow, something's going to get missed.
Yeah, you want to create a predictable, scalable process. That's basically, what this is all about, which is doing it the same way every time. And as you know, when you have one order and you're making a delivery and it goes wrong, it's one thing. But when you have 4 deliveries to make and one goes wrong in that process, it's incredibly stressful. You get the domino effect. All the orders behind it start getting impacted. How you react as an organization when things go wrong is that is your customer service experience. And so things will go wrong, but how you handle it and what you do to make sure that it doesn't happen again is really the difference between very successful companies and unsuccessful ones.
Yes. How have you seen this particular procedure implemented in restaurants?
Uh, which procedure exactly, sorry?
6 steps. Like
Yeah.
how do they train it? What do you see in the restaurants?
Yeah, well, this is an operations-based business challenge, and so your operations people have to be completely bought in to what has to happen here. You typically, want to, funnel your transactions into the right channel. So when catering comes in, whether it comes in through a mobile order, whether it comes in through a telephone call into your restaurant, it should all end up at a single point of contact, depending on the volume you have in your restaurant, where you have a catering specialist that's handling those inquiries. So anything coming in online or telephone should go into the hands of a catering specialist, which is step number 1, which is receiving your orders. When you have walk-ins and people coming into your restaurant to place orders, you may have a different dynamic where you basically need to have a catering captain. This comes into really your catering certification in your stores. Who is your point of contact at the store level for catering when customers walk in off the street? Because your salespeople may be out or your call center may be in a different city, and you need to have some process to hand off the customer into a service experience. So receiving orders is critical. And typical recommendation is it comes into a control point, and orders are taken at that point. Now, production, essentially, the preparation of catering should all happen the day before. We're looking at what I would call a batch manufacturing process. So if I'm looking at today's catering orders, I'm also looking at tomorrow and I'm looking at the day after so that I can get a sense of how much turkey I need to slice. How much cheese am I going to need? How many tomatoes am I going to need? That type of conversation. Now, my beverages, for example, if they're bottled or canned, my paper service, all of those items can be done several days in advance. These are shelf-stable products that you can take time to organize for the orders in the upcoming days. And then typically the night before is, when you get into your menu development, which is really looking at what is scalable within your menu. So, salad bar is very easy to do. You may just have to cook off your proteins, as an example,
Mhm.
maybe 30 minutes before you have to make your deliveries, but everything else is prepared, either beginning the night before or beginning at 5 a.m. for lunch that day. So that's an element that you need. So it's an operations-based thing. And again, you need your catering lead person on production. While that's going on, your delivery drivers are getting ready to go. So they've got the trucks going. They're organizing the paper service, their beverages, all of those elements, all the paperwork and invoicing. They're making sure the payments are all gone through. There's nothing outstanding. And they're getting ready to take it off the line and get it onto the truck. Okay. And so, those are the elements of sort of team members, if you will, that are involved in the sort of execution. And then the delivery driver takes it right through to delivery and setup. They're doing most of the preparation along with the kitchen, and then your follow-up comes back into what would be your single point of contact, your catering expert, if you will. And that's typically the workflow that we see within these restaurants.
Yeah. And I've seen it where they when we do our back of the house kits, we include a poster size of this, right?
Yeah, so the back of the house, we call it the catering activation kit now, is really just a box that's full of content and educational materials. So there's posters for the wall. I think Lisa, you might even have more examples as you go through here. It's all about education. There's books, there's curriculums, there's videos, there's how-to videos. There's a whole bunch of elements that live inside this kit that we ship right to the restaurant. You open it up and you use these as job aids and training aids for your people.
That's great. I love it. And this as a poster in the restaurant also acts as almost a post-mortem tool, a training tool. So when something goes wrong, we're late, we forget something, we can always refer back to the 6 steps and say, okay, what step did we miss? And this is really helpful when you're really just kind of starting to scale the program and you're getting used to all these procedures. So, this is one of my favorite tools in that activation kit. I mean, I like all of it, of course, but I really like the 6 steps.
100%.
So I've heard you mention many times that we need to include the store in our catering sales goals.
Yes.
And these are some really cool tools that you came up with. We kind of share what your thought process behind them were.
Yeah, so what you don't measure, you don't improve. So that's the first thing. And so the biggest paradigm shift for restaurant companies that we see in this space is we have to become selling machines. And so building a sales organization, it does not come easy to restaurateurs. And what does that mean? It means that you're bringing your organization into the realm of professional selling, and the idea that selling is happening at all touch points of your organization. Many of us have referred to in the industry as upsell or this sell, or waiters or waitresses have been trained to sell beverages or desserts, that incremental item that that hopefully people will add to their order to increase the average check. So we all understand that idea, but what we don't understand is how we speak to our community about horizontal services. So catering is another service channel that is offered by restaurants. Raising the awareness on that service and that channel remains a challenge for anybody. So, signs in the window, of course, all the marketing, tabletops, you might have an ad and so on. But the most effective thing that you can do as a restaurateur is engage your frontline people to help generate catering sales. And so the typical structure in an organization we see is we have one person who's responsible for catering, could be a director of catering, for example. That person typically has a salesperson who reports into them called a catering sales manager. And that catering sales manager is responsible for making sure at the store level that people are trained properly to sell catering at the store level. And they're also responsible to go out and build relationships with companies and large companies that can place orders on a regular basis with your restaurant brand. And so one of the things that we know moves the needle on sales is that if we can engage our team at the store level and play a game with them, as an example, what is the restaurant, what is this location's catering sales goals, and measure them on a daily basis and color that thermometer in, and then have some bonus structure in there for your GMs and frontline workers to get business cards, or whatever the metrics are we decide to measure. We're guaranteed success. We always move the needle when we engage our people in selling. Okay, so that's what this is. That's really what this is about.
I love it. And, I love it for a lot of different reasons, everything that you just said. And then I also like it because, so often there's catering sales managers or coordinators that are responsible for sales. And the restaurants seem to think that they're, kind of separate from that process or from that need. And it really, in truth, it has to be a combined effort. So I remember one conversation I had with a GM one time, and I was a catering sales manager, and he said, "So what are you doing for my sales?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you doing for your sales? Let's talk about everything I'm doing, and let's talk about what you're doing." So I like that it brings the outside field sales support and the restaurant together a little more to come together to build some strategies.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent point, Lisa. Very good.
And what's this one all about?
Yeah, it's basically what it is. It's just recognizing who's your catering star, who is your person inside your location who is making catering happen. And it's always the unsung heroes, it's the delivery driver who did the extra delivery. It's the person that came in an hour early because there was a last minute order, and how are we going to do it? And it's that individual that came in 4:30 a.m. to let the baker in to get the bread ready so we get the order. As an example, these are the types of things we need to be looking for and celebrating all the time within our catering operation. And so these are sort of general fundamental things you should be doing in any business, is recognizing your team and your people. In our case, we've caterized it. So we're just saying, look, within your business, catering is its own business, and you should be doing these things to keep your team motivated and keep your culture alive, and all the things it takes to grow a business.
I love this because it really is just the little things. Not everybody has to be monetarily incentivized to sell catering and be on the team. And I love that if you just, we saw this in one of the restaurants, they had about 20 of these over the years. And they had the picture of the person that was making catering happen and selling it on the front lines, or like you said, coming in early or helping out on a delivery. And I'm telling you, the buzz in that restaurant about catering, they loved catering. And it was a simple piece of, I mean, what is it? It's cardboard, right? I mean, it's in the box, it's in the activation kit. And
Mhm.
I mean, I just love it. It's such a simple, but such a powerful tool.
Yes.
All right, so it's time to talk about once an order leaves the restaurant. And I think you said this earlier, the manager loses all visibility to it. So, unlike in the restaurants where we see the whole service experience from the beginning to end, we only see the beginning for catering. Is once it leaves those doors, we don't really know what happens, right? I mean, the driver
Yes.
can come back and tell us, but the manager, somebody that's capable of making it right, isn't there, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the QAs, there's a visual aspect to this. So, teaching our people to be able to look at product going out the door, to be able to say, okay, that's not wrapped properly. That box over there is soggy. We got to change it, because what we're dealing with, in fresh food, manufacturing and delivery, we're dealing with product degradation very quickly, depending on your menu, especially if you're in a hot menus. But there's moisture in our food. There's things to deal with and manage, and we have this window between when it leaves and when it gets to the destination, which could be 15, 20 minutes, a half hour, where things happen to the product. And so if the more we can mitigate at the front end of that, in other words, if we spot a problem before it goes out the door, it won't be a problem when it gets to the customer, which is much worse. So creating these checklists, if you will, which I think are all different, because essentially it's so menu driven. So the checklist for a Mexican concept is going to be different than the checklist for, let's say, a Japanese concept, as an example. Okay. In the Japanese concept, it's things like, do we have extra soy sauce, wasabi, ginger, those kinds of things, chopsticks. In a Mexican concept, it might be salsa, so they're all different, and so it's really a question of mitigating the risk on these deliveries and transactions. That's what this is all about, and teaching your people, specifically your drivers, who are the last point of contact, is before it goes out the door, they should feel the product, look at the product, would they want to eat the product, ask these questions, to build that culture that anybody in the organization can send an order back to the kitchen, and that's really important.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. The more eyes on it, the better. We've also used this out in the field where, let's say a catering sales manager is out doing a delivery and she knows that or not doing a delivery, doing a meeting rather, and she knows there's a delivery in that same building or around the block. And she just wants to make sure that we're consistently setting up the product each and every time the same way with every restaurant, every driver, because we share customers, right? So a pharmaceutical rep can have a 50-mile territory, and there might be three restaurants within that 50-mile territory. So it's real important that every experience is the same and consistent in order for her or him to feel confident in the product. So this just allows,
Right.
a catering sales manager to drop in on that delivery and do a quick checklist and then go back to the restaurant and say, hey, I noticed some things were different this time. Let's think about retraining this driver a little bit.
Absolutely, and that also ties into your benchmarking and certification process. So you have to be in a constant audit process of your systems
Yeah.
to be able to improve them. And so you have somebody in your organization who is responsible for catering quality control, and that person goes around from store to store and helps to audit and documents and trains and teaches and corrects, and that's all part of the 5 pillars, which is really nailing down your operations. So training is huge in all of this for sure.
Yeah, and a great best practice that I just saw was utilizing managers in training. So, as part of their training, this is what they did. Talk about baking in the catering culture right from the beginning of their start with the company. It's brilliant to me. I mean, this was
Right.
really giving them a very clear idea of what the standards were, and having them have an opportunity to go out there and see what our buyers look like and what they're interested in. So, I love that idea.
Yeah, good, good.
So here's the 911 kit.
Yeah. So this is really designed as an idea to, again, it's about mitigating risk. And so on the van, you should always have a kit of emergency replacement supplies that we know we can replace. So for example, paper plates, napkins, straws, all the obvious stuff. You might want to have beverages, things that don't spoil, some inventory that sits on the truck of items that may or may not have to go into catering orders last moment, menus, those types of things that really, really can help the customer on the other side in the event that operationally, you made a mistake or you forgot something. That at least in the truck you have, some inventory there to double up and secure yourself against these kinds of problems. And I'll tell you, it's terrible when you get to a boardroom and you go, oh no, the paper plates aren't here. And I mean, this is pennies. This is something that costs pennies, but yet is such a high impact on the experience of your customer and the stress that it can drive of them running around looking for paper plates, which now reflects poorly on your brand and typically a complaint and maybe I won't use you again. So this is just about organization and preparation and having it close by and close to you and accessible so that you can solve some of the problems that you will run into when you're on the road.
Yep. And I can't tell you how many times, the drivers have thanked their lucky stars that they had this 911 kit in their cars or in their truck because, having to go all the way back to the restaurant because they forgot, tongs or they forgot menu or not menus, but serving spoons or whatever the case may be is just, and they might have two other orders in their car that were waiting to get to the next level. So now all that food, right, is going to be held longer. And so, I mean, this is just a simple idea and it's saved many orders.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's get into a little bit of the delivery 101. All of these, I think you said this earlier, but all of this is found in the activation kits and they're so helpful. And we're going to get into some of these driver. And because I would say, and tell me if you agree with me, Earl, but I really think about 99% of all catering order complaints happen during the delivery process.
Mm.
Even if the order was, it was an order capture complaint, you don't really find out about that until you're at the delivery site.
Yes. Yeah, no, delivery is so key, so key. And it's interesting because the delivery space is changing so rapidly right now. And you have this on-demand world that's building and these third-party delivery companies that are coming in and they're actually doing a decent job. They're setting standard is what they're doing. They're elevating the level of service. But regardless of what you do inside your organization, your drivers play such a key role, not just in making sure of helping to execute and get orders out the door and keep things organized and last minute things and truck repairs and delivery issues, coordinating other drivers and all the elements that are related to just keeping orders going out the back door. That you need to make sure that you have a very clear defined role within your organization of a point of contact is a driver, so a driver supervisor as an example.
Yeah.
If you only have one driver, it could be the same person, but you might have, three drivers, and you need somebody who's responsible for the other two. Very, very important that somebody's coordinating them, and they have to hold them to a standard, which is basically making sure that they are following their steps that they're defined throughout the day in their checklist. And again, your checklist may be different, but it's everything to do with getting orders out the door, replenishing supplies, getting things ready for the next day that they can get ready, organizing paperwork and delivery logs, making sure there's gas in the van, keeping the insurance organized, keeping the vans clean, air in the tires, all the oil, the catering 911 kits, all of those elements your drivers need to take responsibility for and should be part of their daily checklist. And of course, safety is key here because, they're out there driving around and things do happen. So you want to have a safety checklist that they're checking against. You want to be working on them, on their driving skills. These are things you definitely want to spend some time doing with your drivers.
Yeah, I was just talking with another chain, and I don't want to derail the conversation, but I'm really interested in your perspective on these third party delivery companies because right now, this company I'm working with is getting drivers, certifying drivers, and that's kind of, that's complicated. They have to have proof of insurance, they have to have a valid driver's license. These folders have to be updated and managed, right? Because it's the liability of the restaurant. So with all that being said, there's a lot of labor that goes into that and a lot of time. And historically, the third party delivery companies I thought were a little expensive. Plus, you were putting your brand in somebody else's hands, which was a little risky. But when you just said that, I'm assuming, or I'm interested, have they evolved, in the past, like, several months or years?
There's definitely an evolution happening in delivery, for sure. Um, it's being differentiated by a service experience. So, Uber, Google, Amazon, Postmates, all these guys are getting into the delivery game, which is really, they're claiming they can deliver an ice cream or they can deliver a latte, that type of thing. And so I'm just not clear on the economics yet. It's
Okay.
never worked in the past. It's always been a percentage of sales that drivers have taken.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure that they can get enough scale to drive the price point to a place where the economics make sense, but we'll see. So far, all the companies that are doing it are VC funded. So they're all getting money to run at this market, and I don't think any of them operationally are profitable. Not that we've seen anyway, certainly not the ones we're hearing about.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see how that business model shakes out.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you. So here's just a preparation list. Again, these are all just checklists, processes, procedures for the drivers. Arrive 15 minutes prior to your shift. This is really helping the manager kind of manage those drivers and set the expectations for them.
Yeah, keep going. Good stuff.
Yeah, well, this it's all good. It's complete assigned side work. So what is the side work? Some of those bags, I don't know if you how many I'm sure you've been on countless deliveries, Earl, but those bags, those delivery bags, if they're not washed out and aired out, they get that moldy, like gross smell, and that has to be, those have to be cleaned out, stored, air dried, hung up. There's side work that goes in. It's not that the driver just, takes the delivery and goes home. So what is he supposed to do? And so I love
Absolutely.
this one.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. Keeping track of the equipment, keeping the equipment clean, sanitary, health safety, health and food safety, handling, all of those things fall within your drivers. There's no question about it. So we call them drivers, but they're a whole lot more. They're really contributing to, they're really, catering coordinators at the store level because they're doing a lot of coordination and they happen to be doing the delivery as well. But the delivery is over within sort of half an hour to 45 minutes. So it's what are they doing? What are they doing with the rest of their shift is a key question, and these checklists are meant to help provide those best practices.
Yeah. And if you want to call the Institute, we can help you with, kind of the driver job description and what we recommend for guidelines for payment because these drivers for catering they're going to these businesses and B2B. It's a different service level than the pizza driver. So you're looking for a different skill set, right, Earl?
100% skill set, the way they look matters. Clean hands, fingernails, uniform is huge. Yeah, all of these elements. So yes, this is not a pizza delivery. Not to say that the pizza company shouldn't be doing that as well. They should go improve their driver standards. But we want somebody who is very personable, somebody with a great smile, somebody who really is customer centric, because this is the point of reference that your customer will have of your catering experience.
The whole thing.
Uh,
They're never in the
Absolutely,
restaurant. I mean, everything is on that driver.
absolutely.
Well, Earl, I think this was great. Thank you so much. Um, I didn't have any questions come in. So if there are any questions later on after you view the webinar, please feel free to give us a call at the Catering Institute or email us. We're always here. Just go to cateringinstitute.com and we'd be happy to help you in any way we can.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa, for having me today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Always. You're the best.
Okay, I'll see you soon.
Thank you. So just to go through our next webinar is all about holiday catering marketing. So can you believe it? We're already here. September is the best time to finalize your holiday campaigns, identify your targets, and call last year's customers. So join us at the Institute as well as some of the industry's best leaders to discuss the simple tools of success. And also join Earl, myself, and Tracy Abolio for our catering sales workshop on October 13th in Dallas. Woohoo! This is an awesome event. It really helps bring together the catering community. We share some best practices, and we even get a little training among the fun and entertainment. So, Earl, any spoilers you want to get? Any spoilers you want to give to that event, or is it we're going to keep it secret?
Well, we're keeping it all under hat,
Oh, okay.
but it's going to be a great event. We've got more than 100 people registered already, and it's going to be a great day. So hopefully people can come.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Earl, again. Have a great day, and we look forward to speaking to you all on our next webinar. Have a good one.